Welcome everyone to another episode of That's Some Crazy Shit with Kelly and James. I am one of your hosts, Kelly, and my co-host is James. How you doing, brother?
I'm good, my sister. Things are cold, but they're good.
Well, it is still January. It's still winter. So yeah, it's probably still cold.
No snow, though. That's kind of scary. That's crazy, I guess I should say.
It's only crazy if you live in a place where it snows.
That is true. See, but you growing up where I live, we had snow. You remember us having snow, right?
We don't have snow anymore.
No, we don't have snow anymore.
Not like we used to. I remember snow being all the way up, to my hip.
Oh yeah.
Trudging through snow and having true snow days. You are snowed in. True snow days.
When we were maybe in elementary, but not since I've been working. Yeah, not since I've been working in the education system. We've had. No, that's not true. We had our first snow day in 30-something years ago.
So one day we'll have to maybe do a show on global warming, because that's some crazy shit. I don't fully understand global warming. Besides, they say that the Earth is getting warmer, and they do. And I did read an article where they say the pattern of weather is changing, right? So we could do a whole thing on the crazy shit that global warming sees. But I don't know. It looks kind of depressing and sad. And I like to live in my bubble of non-depressing topics, so I don't know. Let me share this story with you as far as crazy shit that's happened over the past couple of weeks. And then we'll get into today's show. So today we're going to be tackling cattle mutilations, and not necessarily cattle, animal mutilations over time, and the first one that was reported up until the present time, and some of the crazy shit that goes on when these animals are mutilated. So we'll get into that in a little while, but I wanted to bring this story up to you, James, because when I read it, I was like, that's some crazy shit. So this dude, and I guess maybe I shouldn't have called him a dude, his name is Mr. Singh, S-I-N-G-H. He's 36, and he was arrested in the Chicago O'Hare Airport because he was basically living in the airport for 3 months. He flew to Chicago, and then because of COVID, he was afraid to fly back to his home in California. So he was afraid to get on the plane. He did not get on the plane. Instead, he stole an ID and basically lived in the airport for 3 months. The ID gave him access to restricted parts of the airport, and he had been doing this for 3 months. The guy who lost the ID reported his ID missing in October of 2020. They caught this guy in January of 2021.
3 months in the airport.
3 months in the airport.
In restricted area.
In restricted areas. And it kills me because did this dude not have a job to go home to, or did he not have somebody that he could call hey, I don't want to fly, get me a bus ticket or a train ticket, or I'm gonna rent a car or whatever. But who does that? And did nobody not miss this guy? Did nobody not miss him? For 3 months, you're gone. You're gone. When he went to Chicago, who did he visit in Chicago? Because maybe he could have went back to their house, right? As opposed of just hanging out in the airport. I'm so afraid of COVID. I'm not getting on the plane. I'm just going to hang out here. I'm not going to call nobody. I'm just going to hang out here.
Yeah, no kidding, huh?
That's crazy. I never thought about that. That's crazy. Who does that? So
apparently Mr. Singh.
So he will face felony charges of criminal trespass in a restricted area of an airport, as well as misdemeanor theft charges because of the stolen badge. His bail was set at $1,000. I don't know if he's made bail. I don't know if what happened to him. Oh, he has a hearing scheduled for the 27th of January, which at the time of this podcast, the 27th has not happened yet. So I don't know what will happen to this guy. I just find it incredibly disturbing that you could live in the airport for 3 months. Nobody knows you're gone. You left.
Yeah.
Hey, I'm going to Chicago. I'll be back. And nobody hears from you for 3 months.
For 3 months.
But I mean, that's what I'm saying. Did you not call anybody?
Yeah, and that, like you said, who were you going to go to visit, and did they miss you? Hey, wasn't such and such supposed to be here like 3 months ago?
Yeah. Or what about like where you live? It's just crazy to me. So yes, that was one of the stories that I read that I was like, that's crazy, right?
That is
3 months.
But what's crazy? You think everything you need is in that airport. Apparently, he was getting fed. He must have been getting to facilities where he could keep clean. Everything he needed, I guess, is in the airport.
Okay. So I'm just gonna take a minute. I'm gonna take a minute from what you said. Yeah, he probably could eat, but I would imagine sooner or later you're gonna run out of money.
Right.
A lot of the places in the airport, although the airport is open 24/7, a lot of the food establishments are not. Wouldn't they get suspicious of you if you came to the same McDonald's every day or every other day in the same clothes? Because I don't know if he's changing clothes. Did he check his bag? Did he check his bag and the bag flew home and he did not? Did he have a carry-on? See, this is what the article didn't tell me, but these are all the crazy shit that's running through my head. Do you not have a cell phone? Where did you sleep? Did you get a pillow? Did you get a blanket? I mean,
I would just sleep on a bench, you
can't sleep on benches in the airport. Well, I guess you can, but are you wearing the same clothes every day, James? Are you brushing your teeth? Are you, These are important questions that articles need to include when they write shit like this, because I need to know. What the hell? Those are good
questions. Now I need to know.
I need to know, what were you doing? Which is why I miss my calling to be a detective. Right? I miss my calling in life, because I would have detected the shit out of this.
You would have, right? Man. You're like Batman.
So another one that I thought was funny that I read was Space Force. Space Force has a new name. People who are in the Space Force are now called Guardians. And so that means
I guess that's
we have our own Guardians of the Galaxy Space Command on the of the High Frontier. That's what I'm calling it. They actually came out with this back in December, so it's what we could say old news. But I do find it funny that even the insignia has similarities to the Star Trek insignia.
Yeah, I haven't seen it yet.
Yep. Space Force has 400,000 members, or I'm sorry, not 400,000, 4,000 Guardians.
I was like, fucking 400,000 already?
Right. And it's been it was created a year ago. But if you are in the Space Force, congratulations. You are now officially a Guardian.
Well, that's cool. I mean, I wonder what all the qualifications and things are that they have to meet. Do they have to be Air Force? Or do they have to be some kind of aviator?
I have absolutely no idea. I just thought the article that I read wasn't so much about Space Force as it was about the name that they're now giving them, which is the Guardian. So
that is the important thing. You don't want to sweat the minutia.
Somebody decided to call that out, and so it was just an article that caught my eye. I have one more that I thought was a little odd. This one actually came from TMZ, right? And so,
all right.
And this is about Bigfoot.
Oh, okay. I don't think I heard it. Shoot.
Okay, so in Oklahoma, an elected official introduced a real life bill to establish official Bigfoot hunting season.
Right.
Now, some people are saying that it's stupid, and who thunked that up? But Oklahoma State Senator Justin Humphrey, he drafted the Bigfoot bill, and he says that he's been flooded with calls, emails, Facebook notifications from Bigfoot deniers, calling him an idiot and cussing him out.
Bigfoot deniers or Bigfoot believers?
Bigfoot deniers that are saying that he is stupid, he's an idiot, and they're telling him that he's definitely not going to get reelected because this is just utter nonsense. He says that Bigfoot believers are also annoyed with him.
I would think, yeah.
Because, they don't want Bigfoot to be hunted like that, right? And so they're saying that the bill is calling for the death of Bigfoot rather than the catch of Bigfoot.
Well, yeah, you don't go out and catch a deer.
He says that the point of the bill is to generate revenue with tourism, hunting licenses, and tags, and encourage other folks to enjoy the outdoors after spending all this time inside because of the pandemic. So the question is James, you are an avid Bigfoot believer. What do you think about this guy? Is this smart to do a bill, to draft a bill, a Bigfoot bill?
No. In my opinion, no. I think this is going to end badly. I think there are going to be people out there, quote unquote, hunting Bigfoot, and someone's going to get hurt. Someone's going to shoot someone or actually going to kill someone. I mean, that's my opinion. If you wanted to generate revenue, I would say make them a protected species. Come and look for them, take pictures, fish or whatever while you're here,
If you say it's a protected species, don't you have to prove that it exists?
Well, yeah, that's what I'm saying, and then get funding, somehow generate. You could go to a university, and we talked about this in the past, how a lot of institutions don't want to study this stuff, but with so much other resources available, a lot of private. We talked about Skinwalker Ranch. There was a private company that was investigating that. Maybe you could get a private company to investigate Bigfoot.
True, but I think this guy thought he was doing a service, and I'm surprised he would even want to bring this to his Congress Senate floor, but he did.
Agree. And I'm surprised they gave it the time of day, but they did.
I don't know what happened to the bill. I just thought I would bring it up. Oh, it passed. Right on. Well, there you go. Hey, if you're looking to hunt Bigfoot, Oklahoma is the place for you to be. It's open season on Bigfoot. Yeah, just saying. All right, we are going to get right into our topic, which is cattle mutilations. James, let's do it. Let's go into it.
All right. So cattle mutilations, when I first became aware of it, it was during the 80s, and I was a teenager. And this is when we had a thing called print newspapers. This is a long time ago.
What? And I'm sorry, wait. What? Say it again.
Newspaper. Print. Right. Long time ago. But this was kind of cool because, there wasn't so much fake news back then. So I had read an article about mutilations happening in Colorado, so next door. And it started with a horse, and I don't remember the exact name, but this is what I'm sorry, Snippy. So this started the whole interest in mutilations with this horse. And
you want to get into this? You want to get into Snippy?
Yeah, give us some details, Cal.
Okay, so this was back in 1967. Snippy was a horse on a ranch in Alamoso County, Colorado, and was found dead on September 7th, 1967. The thing that was unusual about Snippy is it was an untimely death for the horse, right? They weren't expecting this horse to die. And there was a lot of mysterious things that happened around the death of Snippy. The first one that they thought was the most unusual is there was no blood found on or around or in the body.
And that's a very common trait with, I would say, 99% of the reports.
So no blood. The flesh appeared to have been removed neatly and with precision.
Another trait that's common.
A number of darkened patches, said by the witnesses to look like scorch marks or exhaust, were found about 100 yards away from the carcass. They also found a shrub that was nearly flat. And they also found nearby was a series of 6 small round indentions in the ground arranged in a circle.
Now, this was 66, right? Or 67, excuse me?
September 1967.
So this is before drones, people. So these indentations were not a drone.
So another thing that they also said about Snippy that was unusual is that there was also an account of unusual lights in the area in the sky.
Very common trait.
Right, and they could not explain those unusual lights. And then shortly after, Snippy was found dead. They did later try to rule Snippy as a natural death, but I couldn't. But I couldn't find anything else about it. I didn't really look that hard. I was so caught up in what they had found with this horse, and that story is what seemed to have launched all the other stories that you hear.
Right. So from that point, like I said, up into the 80s, this has been going on. The reporter that broke this story is named Linda Moulton Howell, and she's been following it ever since. Now, this woman is a reporter, and she's written several books on different topics about UFOs, cattle mutilations. She has talked about there being things underneath the Arctic, alien bases. So we'll talk a lot about her. But she's the one who kind of broke this, and she's the one who wrote the story I read. And like you were talking about, they talked about there's not any blood. The cuts are precision made, almost surgically. In some places, looking like they've been cauterized while they're cutting. Internal organs are missing. Sexual organs are missing. These are all very common traits with all of these mutilations. Another one I find is interesting. Scavengers will not touch the carcass.
Yeah, I was going to bring that up. And I'll get into another story in a little while, but that's one of the traits too. Scavengers will not touch the carcass.
Yeah, and right there, that tells you something. Animals have that sixth sense. They know when something's off. And if a scavenger's going to pass up, a meal, that tells you something. And then what makes me laugh is they say, okay, well, scavengers won't touch the carcass, but yet they're saying they're responsible for doing the mutilations. Well, how does that work? How does a coyote make a precision cut right around the eye and remove the eye perfectly?
He gets his supplies from Acme.
Seriously, huh? He's got the Acme mutilation kit.
I'm just saying. When you said coyote, I thought of Wile E. Wile E Coyote, and he got all his stuff from Acme. So that's how coyotes do it, James.
But I'm seriously, this is what people are saying, and you're like, well, that really doesn't jive. What's happening to all this blood, Kelly?
I don't know. Well, let me tell you some more. So,
all right, go.
In 1973, or since I should say 1973, there was a wave of reports of mysterious attacks on cattle in the Midwest. So the first ones occurred in Minnesota and Kansas. And they had some of them, most of them were very inconsistent with predatory attacks by animals. For example, and stuff we already talked about, they seem to be mutilated with precise surgery. Sometimes, usually the eyes, the ears, the mouth, the rectum, and the sex organs are gone. Surgically removed.
Right.
Again, no footprints and absolutely no blood, would suggest there were not animals. So some people say, well, they were cultists. But they did say, however, that if they were cultists, there's no way that they could have drained the body of blood and not leave any behind.
Exactly. Not even a trace. Not
even a trace. No blood behind at all. And so several of the carcasses were brought in for autopsy, which showed the animals died of blackleg, which is a cattle disease, they call it. But however, there was no other reports or allegations of this disease in the county. Right? And then, that was in 1973. In 1974, there were reports in Nebraska and eastern South Dakota. Now, some of these reports coincided with sightings of UFOs, absence of footprints and other tracks, and there were rumors of large helicopters that were being used for cattle rustling. However, it's unlikely because they wouldn't have left carcasses behind. Right? If you were rustling cattle, you don't mutilate them. You take them. You take them. Right? You take the cattle. So they ruled that out. And so they had been trying to explain the mutilations, and then they started saying that it was Satanist, satanic groups. But again, they were saying that with the no tracks and no blood, and these things in the sky, they felt like Satanist groups, it would be unlikely. I went and I did some research to look up the first mutilation. And that was back in England in 1606, where they had these shires that were all connected. Shires like a little town or a borough, where some of these shires were having up to 100 cattle, 100 sheep mutilated per night. And they did say there was mysterious ships in the sky with lights. And this is back in the 1600s. So there were no planes or anything like that at that time.
No drones. Yeah, no drones, no helicopters.
So I thought that was really, really interesting how, again, this goes all the way back to 1606 in England.
I was unaware that it went back that far. Now it raises a question. Remember when we were talking about werewolves and how they were mutilating things, or things were being mutilated and they were blaming on the werewolves. What if they were these lights and people were just saying that to explain these mutilations?
Now, the thing that I don't know about these mutilations is if they have all the same characteristics of what we've said, with the absence of blood, the precision of the cuts, what organs were missing. I don't have that information, but it was just one of the first stories that I could find on cattle mutilation.
It'd be interesting.
No, I'm sorry, animal mutilation.
It'd be interesting to go back and see, what they exactly were there, those precise cuts and stuff. That'd be interesting.
There's another book written by Charles Fort in, I believe, 1931, in which he recalls an outbreak in the winter of 1904 to 1905 in Wales, in which there was a large attack on sheep. And along with these sheep mutilations were stories of strange lights in the sky and mysterious air vessels. In 1910, sheep were killed on a large scale, something that attacked a half a dozen each night. And rabbits were also killed by having their backs broken.
Wow. Now, you say they report sky ships, it's interesting because in the 80s, it was black helicopters. Okay. Actually, it was black helicopters up until recently. Now I've heard it's drones. So what are these people seeing that's in the sky? It just
they called them mysterious air vessels. So right. They didn't call them UFOs because they didn't have the term back then.
Exactly.
Right. So there was another one that I found. Well, no, James, tell your one that you said that you had found. An article you said from a credible source, which you said was NPR, which you thought was credible. So tell us about that story.
So in my research, I was looking through these things, and like you said, NPR to me is a credible source, and they reported some of these mutilations going on up in Oregon, at a ranch called, and I hope I pronounced this right, Sylvie's Valley Ranch, where these 5 prized bulls, and I think that's interesting. I wonder what percentage of these bulls are like the genetic top of the line. Maybe that's why they're being targeted. But these 5 young bulls showed up on this ranch, and this happened in October of 2020. So this was a recent occurrence, and it's the same thing. These bulls were found with organs removed, precise cuts. The investigators go to where these animals are located, and they report an odd smell. And then when they go back, months later, the carcass is still there. No scavengers will touch these things like we talked about. Okay? There's bloodless removal of the tongue and genitalia. All right? Now, these bulls, they're 2,000 pounds. They're an animal that weighs 1 ton. So whatever is out there mutilating them, the rancher made the comment, if they could take down a 2,000-pound bull, they wouldn't have a problem taking down a 180-pound cowboy. And then he makes the comment, he no longer goes out without being armed. He will take a gun everywhere he goes out now on the ranch after what happened. And it's the same thing, they happen overnight. How are these huge animals being dissected like that overnight? And it's funny because in the article they say they've offered a $25,000 reward for any information leading to. But you know what, Kelly? You'll find it when you go back and you look at these stories, no matter how much money's being offered, no one ever comes forward with any kind of information.
Because I don't think anybody has any.
Exactly. How are all these mutilations happening and there's not one witness of something, or there's not one person who's going to come out and say, well, yeah, I was a part of a satanic cult. We did it. I think that's interesting.
Well, it's funny that you say that. So the Sylvie's Ranch, that's located in Oregon, right?
Correct.
So there was another ranch that I had read about around the same timeline as yours in September 18th of 2019. The reason why it's just coming out now is that the police of that county, it's called Lake County, just released the information. Right? So he said that he found, his name is Roth, it's his last name. Mr. Roth has a ranch in Oregon. He has 5 kids. And on September 18th, he found a slain cow, and she was missing her udder, her genitalias, her tongue, her blood, and her heart. All of those things. And she was, he said that he had been out the day before, and she was roughly a couple of 100 yards from the water trough, right?
Scary, yeah. Day before.
And so he said that it really creeped him out, right? Because he had heard about the 5 bulls at the Sylvie's Ranch. So he had heard that same story because the Sylvie's Ranch is not far from his ranch, right? So he had heard about that mutilation. He said that there were a couple of weird things about the mutilation.
Mutilation?
Mutilation.
I can't say it now either. Thanks.
Mutilation, right?
Mutilation.
They found some, what they thought may be ostrich plume-like feathers.
Ostrich?
They said no, I didn't say ostrich. They found what they said looked like ostrich plume feathers. They were gray and white.
Ostrich? That's just weird,
They were fluffy enough, and they were not synthetic, and they were scattered in a straight line from the trees to the animals hung up in sage and grass. So it's almost like they took a bird and dragged it across the treetop and left a trail of feathers, right? That was the first strange thing that they found.
Yeah, that is
strange. Were these strange feathers, right? And they said that It did not come from a common bird in that area. Okay?
Yeah, I just don't run around in Oregon.
Some other strange disturbances that they found with this mutilation was the cow had a yellow plastic tag in its ear, which was 1313. It was found on Friday the 13th. Again, the precise cuts of the cow under the underbelly, surgical cuts. There were no footprints, truck marks, ATV.
No.
And they also said that there were a few thrash marks where the cow had moved around on the ground, like somebody had dragged the cow around. But there were no other marks than that.
I bet it was the cow kind of struggling,
That's what they said, thrashing around. And they said that one of the guys touched the dead carcass, and after he touched it, he got sick. Not sick as in throwing up, but he got like a flu bug. He is the only one who got ill, and he is the only one who touched the cow.
That's interesting, because of all the reports I've heard or read about, I don't think I've ever heard of someone getting sick after contact. Maybe now that makes me think, is it something biological? Something that they left that made them sick?
That's a good question. Don't really know. But they have it's interesting, they find that because the scavengers will not touch these carcasses, that when they leave and come back, the carcasses are still there.
Yep. Years later. You can go back years later, they say they're still there.
And they don't know why. And this even happened up in New Mexico, where it had mutilated cows, the same thing. This one, they said that they felt that it had been raised up and then dropped at a distance because of its wounds.
Right. I've read that where okay, so there's no evidence of how a cow gets there, but yet the four legs are broken, or the ribs are crushed. And like you say, it seems like they're being dropped from a distance. What's going on?
And and they say, like, they talk to a veterinarian, and he's like, if you're going to remove all of those things from a cow, right, which would be the heart, all the internal organs, the stomach, all that stuff, rubber boots are necessary, just because all the blood that's going to come out at the time of the removal. It's not humanly possible for a human to do those precise surgical cuts, remove these organs, and not leave any trace of blood, any tracks. And if it was an animal, they would probably go ahead and scavenger those carcasses.
And a predator, to bring down an animal that large is going to be messy.
Absolutely. And it's going to be half eaten. These cows are not eaten, so they don't believe them to be predators in that nature because they're not being eaten. They're having precise organs taken from them in a surgical fashion.
But that's one of the excuses they're saying. It's predation. No, it's not predation, man. A pack of wolves isn't going to be able to do that. A cougar isn't going to be able to do that. A bear isn't going to be able to do that. It's just not possible.
Yeah, absolutely, just not possible. And there's a lot of other information on cattle mutilation. It's nothing that is just in the United States. They have cases of mutilated horses in France. There are cases all through England of sheep, like I said, being mutilated, and their cattle as well. Again, those stories also have with the bright lights in the sky as well. So this is something that is worldwide, that nobody's been able to explain for years.
Right, and it's funny because not only is it worldwide, but I don't know if I want to say it's cryptid. It's spread throughout different cryptids. I've heard reports of UFOs being sighted, and then here's a story. A guy's out in the woods. He's riding his horse, and he comes upon a disc floating. He says treetops. Then it shoots down a beam. In this beam walks out a Bigfoot. And this guy said he could not move. he couldn't react. There's no way he could not shoot it if he wanted to. He said this animal walked right past him, wasn't even there. The UFO, took off. Bigfoot took off, and then days later, mutilations start happening in the area. So you had mutilation, Bigfoot, UFO. Are they all connected?
Well, I don't know, but I wanted to find out how many of these mutilations have been reported in the United States. And an article that I found in the New York Post, and this article was dated September 5th, 2016. So the numbers are probably even more now. But back then in 2016, there had been roughly about 10,000 unexplained animal mutilations across the United States. And there's this UFO guy named Chuck Zukowski.
I'm not familiar.
Chuck Zukowski, and he spent the last 30 years investigating not only UFO sightings, but animal mutilations across the Rockies and the Southwest. And he is the one saying that, over 30 years, he finds that there's, all of these things, although different, there's things that just make them all the same.
Right. There's similar traits, yeah.
Which is what we talked about. So this guy's been following these mutilations for 30 years.
Yeah. And like I said, another good source is Linda. She's a good source for these things too. She's a really good source for any of this stuff we talk about, She really is on the cutting edge, I think. She gets a lot of, whistleblowers, if you want to call them that.
You're talking the lady who wrote the book.
Yeah, Linda Moulton Howe. She is, and we'll talk about her more because, like I said, she's talked about there being bases in Antarctica, and she's talked about cattle mutilations, and she's investigated Bigfoot and UFOs. Yeah, so she's a really good source for all this stuff.
Yeah, it is incredibly interesting. The part that really makes me raise an eyebrow is the missing of the blood.
Yeah.
The missing of the blood and just certain organs. I also read an article where they said that the organs that were left were mushy. Right? They were mushy. They were different than they were the consistency of peanut butter and mushy.
Yeah, and makes you wonder what causes that? Is there I don't think I've heard anyone come out and say, well, it's a chemical thing or it's a bacterial thing, it's just, they don't seem to say, maybe they don't know.
I think they don't know. I mean, I think that most people would say cattle mutilations equal UFOs, equal alien activity. But again, there's no proof. Nobody's ever got any of this stuff on camera.
No.
The ranchers don't seem to hear anything while this is going on.
No.
And so, they just get up the next morning and, their cows and, like you're right, to take down 5 2,000-pound bulls in a night.
Serious.
Or 100 sheep in a night.
Yeah. So you figure how long, how long is the darkness in that period of time, let's say, even 12 hours, to 100 sheep in 12 hours,
Yeah, it's kind of crazy when you think about it. So I don't have anything else on cattle mutilations or animal mutilations, James. What about you?
It's just interesting. It's crazy. How is this all stuff happening? I'm really intrigued about the whole UFO Bigfoot mutilation one. That one really intrigues me.
I bet you are.
So,
well, we are going to take a break, and when we come back, we are going to do a round of random bullshit. If you haven't heard about Anchor, let me tell you, it's the easiest way to make a podcast. Let me explain. It's free, and free's always good. There's these really great creation tools that allow you to record and edit your podcast right from your phone or your computer. And then Anchor will take your podcast and distribute it for you so it can be heard on Spotify, Apple's Podcast, and many more. You can make money from your podcast with no minimum listenership.
It's everything you need in one place to make a podcast. Download the free Anchor app or go to anchor.fm to get started. It's everything you need to make a podcast.
All right, so we are back with random bullshit. So, James, I was thinking about it because, we have this podcast, and I did not realize how many podcasts are actually out there. There are a ton of podcasts out there, probably from every topic you can think of, right?
Oh, yeah.
There is a podcast for it. So it makes me wonder, like, and it's funny because we do one, but I'm going to put it out there. What is the draw to podcast? I mean, is it the fact that you're recording yourself and others may come listen to it later? Is it the fact that you really have something to say? Why now? Is it because we're all in a pandemic and this is another way to express and communicate? Because podcasts have been around for a while, but I think there's been an explosion of podcasts. And I will tell you that on Instagram, we are on Instagram, and we have, about 800 followers, and we follow about another 1,000 people. Most of the other people that we follow are podcasters. That tells you the number, right?
Right.
So most of our people that we follow are those fellow podcasters like us doing podcasts on a variety of topics. My question to you is, James, we talked about kind of why we're doing the podcast, but honestly, why did you want to do the podcast?
Well, there's a couple reasons, actually. One is I've had personally a couple of paranormal experiences, and I wanted to be able to get my story out there. And when we talk about these things, I think I enjoy when we talk about it because we just I don't think we're just believers just for the sake of believing. I honestly think that we take a critical look at things. I think we look at the science and kind of ask questions and stuff. And so I enjoy that part of our conversation. So part of it was to get my story out. Part of it was I enjoy our conversations on these topics. And I think the third one we always talk about is to give these other people a chance to come forward. To be honest, how many people? I think since we've been doing this, I found there are a lot of people who have these experiences, but they're afraid to come forward.
So you had mentioned your experience, but in the 15 or 16 or 17 podcasts that we've done, you've never said what that is.
Right. And it's just, it's still kind of, I still kind of am afraid to come forward, because I don't want people that don't know me to
time out. Time out.
All right, time out.
You can't have a podcast encourage others to come talk about their experience if you're not willing to talk about your own as the host.
Well, that's true. And we could, I'll tell you guys about it. I've had a couple of experiences.
Okay, tell us now.
Okay, so one that stands out is when a friend and I had gone to an investigation in a little town where I'm from called Magna. And it's a little mining town. It's been there forever. And there was a theater we went to. And this is the hard part for me, Kev, because I can see it in my mind exactly how it happened. But I just can't convey it in words. So this is what's hard for me. So, we go in, and the person who was doing the investigation, his name is Vincent Lord. And he's actually been on Ghost Adventures with Zach and all those guys. So we go there, and he's telling us, and I thought it was interesting because when he's talking about it, he's like, don't so much just trust your senses, because you can be fooled. He says, look at other people around you Look how they're reacting. See what they're doing. Use that to kind of gauge what's going on. And I thought that was interesting. So, we go into this theater, and God, it's like 100-something years old. You go in, and it's an odd setup because you walk in on the side of one of the risers of seats, and you go in, and the stage is set between two risers of seats on the ends. And then there's a sound booth and a light booth that's kind of up in the rafters. But we go in there, and he's telling us about some of the things, the history. A gentleman owned it, and he tried to get it going as a theater. It had served as a brothel, restaurant, all these things, okay? And so while we're sitting there, the lights begin to kind of dim, okay? And so my immediate thought was, theatrical, whatever, and I look up, and there's no one in the light booth. Okay, and so that's just kind of the start of what's going on. The person I had gone with had been on other investigations, and they had some equipment that they had brought along. And so at one point, I decide to go up and do an EVP on my own. So I walk up and I sit in the middle of these seats, and I'm asking, is anyone here and all this. And as I'm doing that, the person I went with comes up, and she has I don't remember the equipment it was, but it was flashing from red to green, indicating how strong the signal was. So she's getting closer to me. It's flashing more green. And as she's doing this, I start to get a little nauseated. Okay, and I'm sitting there, and I'm getting a little lightheaded, and she's getting closer. The lights are going flashing, and they're hitting green. And I'm like, is someone here? And they're flashing. And I'm like, are you the one that's making me not feel well? And honestly, Kelly, I was not feeling well. I was nauseated. I was dizzy. I was a little chilled. And, this thing's going back and forth. And, so she decides to walk back down. And as she's going down the stairs, and further away she gets from me, the light starts going towards red, indicating the signal wasn't as strong. Okay, so I'm sitting there a couple more minutes and kind of compose myself. And then as I'm sitting there, he had a piece of equipment, I'm not sure what it's called, where it sets up a grid of laser beams. Okay, and the theory is, if something crosses between the laser beam, you'll be able to see it. So while we're, everyone's kind of clustered, on the stage in the middle of the setup, and I'm sitting up in the seats, and then as I look across the stage up in the upper left of me, I could swear I saw someone sitting in a chair. And it was because of the lasers. The way the lasers were, you could kind of see a shape. Okay, I have to catch my breath, because this brings back a lot of memories, and it was something that was really weird, So then
I can't believe in all the podcasts that we've done, and we've talked about ghosts and the paranormal. You've never brought it up, but you are encouraging others to come forward.
Well, maybe that just goes to show it's not as easy to come forward as, people think it is.
That is true. Anyway, continue. I didn't mean to interrupt you. Continue.
No, so, I asked, and it was interesting because, the guy who was running the investigation, he says, when you see something, make sure you call it out, make sure you say, did someone see something, hear something, smell something, he says, and try not to whisper. He says, when you're talking, because, if someone's doing EVP, they might pick up your whispering, So, there were all these things he was letting us know. And so, I see this figure, and I asked someone else if they saw anything. I just kind of asked out, does anyone else see anything? And some guy says, yeah, I think I saw something in the corner of the room. And I was like, well, I thought I saw something also. All right, this is just the first of what's going to go on. Okay, then lights start flickering. Okay, and the host is like, see, this is, okay, let me back up. This is how my thoughts go faster than I can explain. At first, he says, can you please give us a sign that you're here? And that's when the lights start to flicker. And then we were in this little area for 45 minutes, maybe, this stuff happening. You know, lights going off, people picking up things on their instruments, you know. So finally, the other part of the group comes and says, well, we need to switch. So then we go upstairs, and I thought this was interesting. We go upstairs, and it's kind of a loft, and there's a great big window that's open to the street, so there's a lot of the ambient street light coming in. So it wasn't completely dark, you could see. So we're walking in this, and this is interesting. I noticed the floor was a little tacky. They had just pulled up the rug covering, they said. So in this room, there's a couple tables set up, and there's chairs around the outside of the room. And in the corner, there's like a little teeny room. And that was it. So that's kind of the layout. And so as we're sitting there, you know, people have their meters out. And on the far side of the room, nothing's really going on. Where me and the person I went with are sitting, the meter starts to go yellow. Okay, so it's starting to indicate something's going on. Now, anyone who knows me knows I don't have a good sense of smell. Okay, it's very hard for me to smell something. If I had to smell something, it has to be pretty strong. So while we're up there, I could swear I smelled oatmeal cookies, Cal. Like someone was baking oatmeal cookies. All right? So and I didn't say anything. So I'm sitting there thinking, and then one of the women that was sitting there said, does someone smell oatmeal cookie? Seriously. Okay, so I'm like, yeah, I smell oatmeal, you know. Well, the guy that was running the investigation says, well, you know, that room you're standing by, he says that was the dressing room for the kids who used to do productions here. That was where they would go to dress. He says it makes sense where you might smell oatmeal. Maybe they're eating oatmeal cookies, or they had oatmeal breakfast or snack or something.
You see, it's interesting that you're now you're coming forward with this in our random bullshit segment, which is never a long segment. But I'm telling you, James, you know, the next time that we sit down together and we have our That's Some Crazy Bullshit chat, we should chat more about this, your other experiences. I think you told me, and I could be wrong, I could just be making this up, you told me that you thought you may have encountered Bigfoot at one time.
Yeah.
Right? That's what you told me. I know that we've both seen strange lights in the sky, right? I've seen them here where I am, which is not unusual for, you know, where I am. I'm in Colorado, not far from the Denver airport, and there's always been a lot of strange stuff that goes down at the Denver airport. There's been lights and stuff that they've seen, so forth and so on. So, you know, James, I think we should get more into it. I just wanted to know, like, why are we doing the podcast? To be completely honest with our listeners, those that do listen to us and like what they hear and at least find us entertaining, this was your idea. This was not my idea.
And this is why, Kel, really, I wanted to get my story out there. Well, and like I said, maybe that just goes to show it's not that easy. You know, it's not that easy to come forward. You know, people who don't know me, you know, who knows? They might think I'm crazy. You know, but the people who do know me, I hope they understand. You know, I think they know how sincere I am. You know, I'm not making this shit up. I'm not crazy.
And, you know, honestly, there'd be no reason to make this stuff up. And that's why I like to keep an open mind about all crazy shit, because it's, you know, it's, even if I may or may not believe it, I do like to ponder and think about it as like, you know, my thing is, for those that know me and may not know, I have a fascination with the reptilians, right? The whole thing just fascinates me, because it's not that I'm saying that it's true, because I don't know if it's true. I really don't. But when I think about it, right, to me, I'm like, God, you know what? That's just crazy enough to be true, right?
You never know, yeah.
You never know. So I like to just kind of ponder it in my mind, give me something to think about. I'm glad it was your idea to do that, some crazy shit. I have made sure to put us out there on every social platform I can think of. So we are on Instagram, we are on Facebook, we are on Twitter, we are on YouTube, and we're not on LinkedIn. I don't know if we're really LinkedIn appropriate, right? So I haven't
Isn't that more professional doppelganger type thing?
It is. So I haven't put us on LinkedIn because I don't think we're a LinkedIn appropriate podcast.
Yeah.
But we're everywhere else. You can always email us at thatsomecrazyshitpodcast@gmail.com. Thatsomecrazyshitpodcast@gmail.com. James, thank you for sharing your story. Now we know why we have the podcast.
Yeah. And you know what, Cal? Now that you got me to open up, I will share the other stories I have, and I want people to be encouraged, now that Kelly sent out our email. You know what? Send us your story. You don't have to tell us your name. You can stay anonymous, You could tell us your story. I'll read it. You could come on and you could tell us, you could tell us about it and stay anonymous. You come on and tell us about it. Tell who you are.
We're always looking for guests. I think that having another point of view, an expert, and we've had, Dr. Tran. So you don't even have to be the paranormal. If you've got some crazy shit that you want to share, that come on, let's talk about it. We're kind of open in that aspect, although we tend to lean toward the paranormal. There's also some other weird, crazy shit out there. Like we've even done meditation.
Right.
So,
and we were talking about how crazy medicine is now, how far it's come.
And just trying to, just stuff like that. So as always, thank you guys so much for listening. We truly appreciate it. We are incredibly blessed and grateful to have however many listeners we have. We're just happy to have you.
Yes, thank you. It does. It takes time out of your day, to listen to us, and we appreciate it, and we hope we do a good job for you.
We absolutely do. Next week, we'll be back with another episode. So I'm signing off. This is Kelly with That's Some Crazy Shit. James?
This is James. Keep your minds open, people.
Until next time.
Ciao.